Just hit that.
Did it come up?
Yeah. Okay, so I need to get it on.
Take that back on, so they want to do something else first.
Okay.
Recording in progress.
Well, are we technically ready to start?
Yes, yes.
Okay, great.
There he is.
I will. Great, we got everyone here. That way I'll gavel in the Special Ways and Means Committee meeting. Roll call, please.
Chairwoman Sims.
Here.
Alderman Gould.
Here.
Alderwoman Tice.
Here.
Alderman Erger.
Here.
All members present.
Great, thank you. Item 2 on the agenda is approval or amendment of the agenda. Does anyone have anything to add or amend? Seeing none, any objection to approving by acclamation? All right, it'll be so approved. Item 3 on the agenda is the report of the committee chair and alderman. I have no report except that I just wanted to call to attention, we've also got another special meeting of the Ways and Means Committee on July 9th at 5:30. If to the extent we don't cover everything we need to cover this evening. Alderman Gould.
No report.
Alderwoman Tice.
No report.
Alderman Erger.
No report.
I see that we have no city administrator report, so we'll move on. I'm seeing that we don't have a department report. Item 6 on the agenda is old business. 6A is funding for the Central Core Fire Training Facility.
Good evening. Bringing this topic back before this committee. We received an update just today from Missouri, the Director of Department of Public Safety, essentially saying they still haven't made a decision. They're waiting on the governor to sign the budget, which will be this week prior to the July 1 start. I was honestly confused by her statement because we did fill an application out for fiscal year 24 funds, and her statement was regarding fiscal year 25 funds. So, short answer, we still do not have an answer on the ARPA grants. However, with the FEMA reimbursement, that did provide relief to the capital improvement plan. So we brought this forward to get commitment from the city to try and progress with the construction of the fire training facility. Currently in fire department budget documents to the finance department, we do have it included in the capital improvement plan split over 2025 and 2026, as do the other cities.
Questions? Just so, so we may not have that information back for the fund source you referenced just earlier, but there's money in the budget. We can move.
Correct.
We can move forward if this committee is inclined to recommend approval and forwarding onto the big board, just from other line items. Is that fair?
That is correct.
And then in terms of if we waited, I mean, would that delay a process?
So, yes, I mean, we have been in delay. We've been in hold waiting on these ARPA funds, the decisions with those grants. So we have been in a holding pattern.
Alderman Tice?
So can you or Michelle clarify what you mean by in the budget and what money is in the budget? Is it just the planning money that's in the budget, or have you or Michelle fix the capital budget so that this is actually in the capital budget in the appropriate years, unlike what we approved?
Sure.
Here.
So only speaking on behalf of the fire department submittals, it's in the fire department submittals. I don't know where she is with compiling that, if she's even got to that point.
Okay, great.
Is that fair?
Yeah, hi, good evening.
It's really premature to start the budget process. We have internally, just to sort of give it a bird's eye view. If it is the wish that this is what we choose to do, then it takes priority. And those funds remain committed dollars as we go through the process, and I continue to gather the rest of the data to get to the 2025 budget. So they remain committed dollars for 25 and 26 based upon the approval of the process.
Wait, so how much of the stuff that was approved for 25 and 26 were we able to fund with the FEMA money that came in? So are we a little ahead now for the next couple
I
years?
actually haven't seen that figure as we're continuing to submit the dollars and find the items for FEMA and SEMA, since it's such a short timeline. So that exercise is not complete at the moment. Has there been relief? Yes. And I think it went all the way out between 24 to 27, 28, depending on where those were. But to have a really good, strong handle on that at the moment, the exercise is still in the process. We must find the items, order the items, have them delivered before we can even submit for reimbursement. So we are in the middle of that process, and it's been about a 3-week exercise, which is still aggressive in nature. So I would love to have an answer for that, but I'm waiting on the process to be the process before I can have a firm grasp on that.
So let's assume we approve it tonight.
Correct.
Is that something that by the time it would get to the Board of Aldermen for approval, we could have some sort of a rough estimate of, like, I know you won't know that we're getting reimbursed
Correct.
because that we have to get the stuff. But assuming that we get reimbursed for the things that FEMA said they would reimburse us for, could that be calculated and sort of?
Yes.
Does that
yes.
question
in
make
a
sense?
In a fluid manner, yes. The answer is, here are the items that we know, here are the items that the departments know that they can actually have and have bids and quotes on. And then as long as we understand the timing delays that may be associated with that, yes. I want to know, where was the relief in the items that we brought to the table based upon the FEMA discussion?
Right, because we didn't have this in the next couple of
No,
years budgeted,
correct.
so I just want to see
Correct.
what, is this enough relief to free up enough funds that we can fund this and not really miss on a bunch of other capital stuff?
On a bunch of
that
other
the city
capital
has
stuff.
been
And
planning on.
internally, I've sort of asked for the department heads to give me a rough estimate on what their needs are for 20, so we can start, and we are pretending to start that process early, so we can true that up and get there. But once again, it's an early exercise. I was in this weekend trying to get all the data in to do that. I mean, and truing up that FEMA is still just slightly difficult until the bids come in and we can make sure the items are even available. Because what we can't do is swap other items in place of the items that we told them we wanted. And so that may not allow the relief we had hoped for if the make and model of the equipment is not available. So there are a few items that I'm waiting on commitment from that. So it really is a timing issue at the moment. I know that doesn't answer your question wholly, but we are desperately trying to make sure that we've cleared those funds, made them available, and then if this becomes the commitment, we'll make it the priority as we go through 25, 26, and look at the items.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other?
Yeah, Chief, as far as the ARPA grants go, is there any type of indication on these grants or any kind of feedback that you've gotten at all?
So the feedback today was not good. I'm not going to lie. I think her exact words is there was over $9 million that's already been appropriated out of those funds, so it's just removed. And they had requests of $79 million total. Now, there was multiple categories in the public safety grants. I don't know if she's talking about all of the different categories totaled 79 million. The radios that we applied for and the fire training facility were separate applications, but also separate funding sources, mechanisms for the grant. So I'm not crystal clear on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough situation because I feel I'm always one that has been cautiously optimistic about all of these funds and hoping that we receive the grants that we think we're going to receive, and then we'll see how it plays out. I do think this is something we should probably consider to move forward. I do say that with caution, that what I don't want to start seeing is thinking, oh, okay, we're going to have all this grant funds reimbursing us for capital expenditures that we had deferred for a reason because we couldn't afford them. And then say, oh, cool, well, that opens up a bunch of other capital things that we can start asking for from every department. And you're asking for this sort of before we even know full vision of what all the other departments need. So it's sort of before the budget process. It's a little bit out of order for my liking, but at the same time, you know, I think that we will see some funds come back from the FEMA relief that could make up this dollar amount. This is just to get the design work for this is not
construction
committing to producing any facilities.
Would agree. It's the pre-construction costs, the site surveys, the testing, and the design costs.
And how far out are we as far as agreements that we had in place that we have to build something?
We have to have, according to the agreement, we have to have a permit by the end of July 2025.
So we need to have
Yeah,
designs in place to
Correct.
to ask for permits
Correct.
that may take a year or more extensions for actually building something.
That is correct.
And the
that does
designs
both.
are going to take how long?
I-
10 months?
I doubt it. I doubt near that long.
6 months?
I doubt even that
Okay.
long. Because it's a prefab
Okay.
structure, the actual structure. So the infrastructure, design, water, and electric would be, the most significant.
And then the amount that's identified in our documents, that $40,000 figure, that's the pre-construction
Correct.
cost.
Correct.
All right, seeing no other questions at this point, the chair would entertain a motion to proceed with approving the city's participation in the construction of a fire training facility and amending the fiscal year '24 budget to cover pre-construction costs in the amount of $40,562.50.
So moved.
Second that.
Okay, we've got a motion by Alderwoman Tice and a second by Alderman Gould. Is there further discussion?
So is this for the fiscal year '24 budget or the fiscal year '25 budget? '24, okay.
So I should interject by saying that the other three cities,
So
mean,
in
they're-
my second question.
then I'll pause.
Where are we at with the other three cities in
So
in
they've
this process?
approved their budgets and they've modeled the construction cost within their 25, 26 budget to fully go forward 100% with this.
And they funded in their '24 budget for
For the design,
pre-construction?
exactly.
Okay.
And, the commission, which is, what we call ourselves, the four cities, they've already committed to funding that part of the 40,000 for each individual cities. So what we're also looking for you to talk about or possibly discuss tonight as part of your motion would be a commitment to go forward with all of it. Construction, knowing fully well that Chief Cottrell has said that we are modeling, he's modeling this, but I think it goes one step further. As the city administrator and the finance director, we have an obligation to model this into the 5-year CIP, knowing fully well other things will have to be deferred. But we also know that we know the outcome of the FEMA funds, and we've received all of that. So what Michelle says is that it's given us relief for future years, but then hard decisions will have to be made. What else do we defer in order to get this done? Because something has to be deferred. We don't have the kind of revenue to sustain everything in the 5-year CIP. So if you're comfortable with that, then we can model that in and go forward. But I think other cities have waited, for quite a while for us to make a decision. So it's good to forward this to the Board of Aldermen And maybe when the Board of Aldermen meets, maybe that's more time to hear from the state. But at some point, I think there's some sort of obligation to let these other cities know, are we still in or are we out?
Alderwoman Tice?
So I'll go back to the question that I asked Michelle. I would like to see, like, I'm comfortable sending this on to the Board of Aldermen, but I would like to see between now and then, sort of, and I know it can't be exact, but sort of a rough estimate of what kind of things, and I can look through too myself and see like, okay, so what kind of things were we able to fund with the FEMA grants, and then what holes do we have, and then how much money does this take, and does that mean that, like, you know, we're not going to pave a street until 2030? Well, you know, that we need to kind of think about that. Or could we not buy the police any more cars until 2034? You know, like, we need to sort of evaluate what impact this has on everything else in the
We've had
capital
that
budget.
discussion, and I know it takes time, so I'll talk to Michelle further after this meeting and put some sort of timeline so that we are able to hopefully bring something before you at the next Board of Aldermen meeting.
Thank you.
I just would like a I mean, my motion was just to approve these pre-construction costs, but is it,
We're asking for more than just that.
so you're asking for
I'm asking for more than just that.
approval of the costs and then
At the Board of Aldermen level?
commitment, we're
Yes.
going to do this?
Yes, exactly. So at the Board of Aldermen, maybe.
And so, I mean, at least by the time of the next Board of Aldermen meeting, will we have more information so we can, I mean, the $40,000 is one thing, it's the promise to pay
I know.
down the road that,
Yes.
you know, and we haven't really,
No, and I
Cut that
fully
out.
understand the need for you to have that information. That's important.
Well, could I alter my amendment, or my motion that says that we will forward the approval for the planning money, and that we expect the Board of Aldermen to vote on yea or nay on participating in the fire training facility at the July meeting?
I'll second that again.
is there any further discussion? All right, seeing none, roll call.
Chairwoman Sims,
Yes.
Alderman Gould,
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice.
Yes.
Alderman Erger.
Yes.
Motion carries by a vote of 4-0.
Okay, item 6B on the agenda is the Employee Compensation, Wage and Benefits and Classification Consulting Services Report. And I think we have our subject matter expert here to give a presentation.
Hi there. Let me make sure.
And just to kind of frame this presentation this evening, a couple things. As to the committee, unless it gets away from us, to the extent that you have questions, I would invite that you ask them kind of in an open forum. You know, please feel like you can ask freely. Just to further frame the presentation tonight, I think we are going to address just the data and the presentation and the results of the report in terms of making a recommendation as to how to act on that information. The city is still kind of analyzing and crunching numbers and from a feasibility standpoint, so we won't be reaching that this evening. That will be at the January. That will be at the July 9th meeting. So this is going to be sort of a data and facts driven type inquiry for this evening. But with that, please.
Sure, thank you. My name is Karen Campbell. Obviously, I'm with PayPoint HR. Joining us remotely via Zoom is my husband, Dr. Rick Campbell. So are you able to see?
Is there a way to put him on a larger screen? There we go.
Stay away the mice.
So we have our presentation to give to you tonight. A background on the study overall. We'll talk to our project approach, how we selected the comparative organizations that we included in the external survey, what we call a compensable factor scoring system, and how we derived that, but at its uses going forward. We're going to be discussing your comparison to the 50th percentile of the market, kind of why we use that as a measure and alternatives to that, and we'll give our recommendations along with the conclusion. So with the project approach, as discussed in employee briefing sessions and our kickoff, we use 3 independent metrics to conduct the survey and the study overall. So we looked at the internal equity within the organization, and in doing so, we looked at getting the assistance of all 122 employees in 59 titles, and asked them to complete a and then also had supervisors review that survey. The study overall began in the early part of 2024. February 7th was the first kind of initial meeting with the project team, and then March 7th was the first meeting with the select board. And we also conducted an external portion of the study, which is one of the independent metrics, looking at comparator organizations, and we'll talk to that in a little bit. And we've presented an initial draft report to the project team in the spring of 2024. And we also used another independent metric, which is your organizational structure and reporting relationships and how Brentwood values various departments and organizations within the city itself. So I'm looking at the internal equity. Again, as I mentioned, we had employees complete a job analysis questionnaire, something PayPoint HR calls position vantage point, in an effort to drive home to employees that it is not a performance review. It's really strictly about why the job exists, what does it entail. What we've come to find in smaller organizations especially is that job titles aren't necessarily clear, and they aren't the same in responsibility from one organization to another. So we reached out to employees to find out exactly how responsibilities employee shoulders here and what hats in particular employees are wearing. So we were able to get that information and have supervisors review that. We look at within the internal equity, we look at 9 what we call compensable factors, or reasons to pay one position differently than another. And that is deemed reasons to pay differently based on Department of Labor factors that they recognize. The external competitiveness and looking at the compensation or external portion of the study, we look at selecting organizations that are similar in product or service offering, as well as socioeconomic factors. There's 9 factors that we, or 6 factors that we look at with regards to that, and we'll discuss that in a moment. But we want to make sure that to the best of our ability, we're comparing apples to apples, not only within jobs we're looking at and the responsibilities of those job titles, but organizations that have a similar footprint, basically, of Brentwood and similar fiscal ability to pay. So that external market was used as the second yardstick. Thirdly, we look at that organizational structure, as I mentioned, in consultation with the project team to look not only what's on paper with regards to the organizational structure, but more or less kind of what is in operational functioning, as well as the vision. And then kind of the final step that we look at is the ability to correlate internal equity to the external market to determine do knowledge, skills, and abilities based on that information directly from your subject matter experts, which are your employees, can that help us to determine what pay would be in the external market? And we'll talk to the results of that as well. With regards to comparators and how they were developed, we looked at 6 comparator factors: population, median property value, median household income, poverty rate, labor force participation rate, and unemployment rate. In essence, we use Brentwood as the center of our target, and then determine how similar they are based on those 6 factors. So in essence, what it looks like from an equation standpoint, in this example on the screen, we show For example, population of Richmond Heights in comparison to Brentwood, and then divide that by the standard deviation of all the comparators. And the survey was sent to a total of 32 organizations, and we were able to get 24 of those to respond, which is a fairly high number, so we feel confident in the validity of our data. And in counting those 24, one of those is actually an aggregate of fire districts. So there were a total of 8 fire districts, and we were fortunate to get the assistant of your fire chief to make sure that those organizations did participate. So we were glad to get that information to better look at specifically your fire department. On the screen right now, we're showing a copy of the first page of that PVP questionnaire that was given to employees and reviewed by supervisors. And it just helps us, again, to very succinctly determine what those responsibilities are. And it was intended to not take employees more than an hour to complete, but it is extensive, and we directed employees to take the time that they felt that it deserved with regards to completing it. So as I mentioned, what we would do as part of our deliverables is look at internal hierarchy, internal equity, and the responses of that questionnaire in relation to the market. And what we found is that there is a high correlation of 97% compared to the responses of employees and the external market. So there is a high predictive ratio there. What that will allow the city to do in the future is answer that same questionnaire that employees answered for positions that either substantially change or are new in the organization. What it will help you do is going forward, allow you to maintain integrity using the benchmarks or the metrics that we used from this study. So you will be able to fill out that questionnaire for either a new position or a substantially changed one. It will yield a score, and that score will tie into your pay grades. So as opposed to subjectively looking at, okay, where should maybe a specialist fall? Should it look between maybe a coordinator and a supervisor? This will allow you to do it based on knowledge, skills, and abilities. So that allows you some way to manage and maintain integrity going forward. So in looking at the overall picture, we're on the screen here showing you an average by department of the outcomes. Each job title was examined, and we compared where the current midpoint of the market was compared to the 50th percentile of the market. So Brentwood, midpoint of your pay to the 50th percentile of the market. And then what we look at is if in a total scheme, and the reason we use percentiles is basically because we don't want to have data skew. We don't want to have any one respondent weigh differently or more heavily than another. So using percentiles helps us to do that. Using the 50th percentile, more or less, is saying if there were 10 respondents, 5 would pay higher and 5 would pay lower. So that's the overall picture there. Using this average in the chart just helps us to get a picture of by department, was any one department, significantly different. And in the numbers and the outcomes here, what we're finding is really no, that it was fairly varied. And as an organizational all told, you're about 5.2% below the market at the 50th percentile. So this is the 50th percentile. And again, that caution is with regards to using the data on that chart to make decisions, because it doesn't tell you more or less how many units were in each department. So for example, fire has a larger number of employees than maybe planning and development, and it doesn't tell you the sample size. So we just want to give you cautions there, but to give you an overall picture of how things are derived there. So in looking at that 50th percentile of the market and how that impacts positions here at Brentwood. At the 50th percentile of the market, there are 16 positions that we identified as substantially below market, and substantially below market means greater than 10% below market. So you can see that the 16 positions that are impacted there. Then we look at positions that were below market, that is 5 to 10% below market, and 22 positions were identified at the 50th percentile to be below market. For positions that are 5% over or 5% under, those are kind of our error range. Those are within close enough range to the market to say, okay, those ones are probably okay. In looking at our recommendations, one of the components we were asked to identify was your salary scale and make recommendations with the salary scale itself for both general and uniformed positions. The scale more or less is what your existing scale is. We're just looking at updating it, and it currently has 33 grades, and what we're identifying is for there to be a 5% difference between those grades and a spread from the minimum to the maximum of 37.5%. What the difference is there is basically the 5% between grades is helping us identify our employees incentivized from a monetary standpoint to want to take on additional responsibilities and move up in their job family and take on additional responsibilities. The spread, or the minimum to the max of the 37.5%, that's identifying if someone wants to be a firefighter, for their full career, for the next 30 years. Are they motivated to want to stay with the organization for that full 30 years? And does it give them ample room to grow? So we looked at the market, what they're offering, and looked at the 37.5% spread. And you can see 36.8% was what the market was offering, so we feel like the 37.5 is a fair assessment there. We recommend that the minimum wage is at the $15, so we're starting grade B1 minimum at the $15 per hour times 28 hours, which is considered full-time. That gives $31,200 as the initial starting entry level. And for general employees' pay and pay scale, we're recommending to stay at the 12, thank you, at 12 steps. And for uniform employees, we're looking at the 7 steps to maintain that. And sorry, just the connection. Thank you. So one of the recommendations that we offer is, in order to stay competitive in the market and stay up with more or less the CPI, is to use the CPI annually to adjust the pay scale as your budget permits. Alternatives to the 50th percentile of the market, depending on your financial wherewithal to adopt these various percentiles of the market, it is shown on the screen here. So if at the 50th percentile of the market, to get all departments and all positions within departments at the 50th percentile of the market, you can see the estimated cost would be roughly around $600,000. If it's the, financial will and the capability or ability of the city to adjust up to the 60th percentile of the market, the cost would be approximately $1 million. At the 70th percentile of the market, the estimated cost would be approximately 1.3 million, and at the 95th percentile of the market, the full cost would be approximately 2.3 million. And you can see also in these tables the overall average percentage by percentile of the difference of how various various departments differ from that percentile. And you can see that, it's not any one department that's glaringly out of alignment, and that more or less if you looked at like the top three in each of the different percentiles, it varies. It just is how it goes. And then the numbers I think, are interestingly, you can't just take the 50th percentile of the market, say what's 10% more, and go to the 60th percentile. And the reason that is because if you go from one percentile to another, different job titles will be impacted. So you're including a larger number of staff, and how they're impacted is different. So it's not, you can't just easily calculate the math. You really do have to dig down to do it by title and by individual employee. So that's our presentation, and we'll be happy to open the floor to questions.
I'm going to ask about the comparators. In the list that you received and then the responses that you received, when you looked at the compensable factors, were there any of them that you were like, this city isn't really a comparator or shouldn't be for any reason, any particular reason? Were there any ones that would have altered, and how would that have altered?
Certainly. So initially, PayPoint HR came to the table with the project team and identified organizations that we thought would be possible comparators, right? So we aren't discriminating necessarily based on any factor. We're just looking at a map more or less and saying, are they within a commutable distance? Does it make sense? In speaking with the project team, and identifying comparators with regards to those 6 factors like population, PayPoint HR identified several that might not necessarily make sense based on those 6 factors to use them as comparators, and spoke with the project team, and with their direction looked at including additional organizations that maybe, because they have 3 times the population, for example, wouldn't be, but that you actually are losing people to, or are getting employees from possibly as well. So we looked at those data points, but also use kind of a common sense approach to comparators to determine which ones we wanted to include. From our perspective, we prefer a wider net because it helps just with the validity of the data and not allowing any one individual organization necessarily skew data, if you will. So the more numbers that we use or have as data points, it helps avoid those outliers.
So you're not concerned that a city, for example, that's 3 times the population size threw off the data, that helped you get more data?
Certainly. And so in talking with employees in briefing sessions, something that I conveyed to them is we like to think of ourselves as referees, more or less, and we're brought in to make sure that the process is followed in a way that is transparent and equitable. And a tool that we give to you is, instead of saying, let's exclude an organization because really we don't think that they're so like Brentwood, or maybe there is, their median household income is varied. What we suggest that you do is, instead of taking those data points out, because again, we can't control who responds to those studies, right? We just hope that as many of them responds as possible. What we give to you are the percentiles to say, let's change where we're strategically placing ourselves in the market. Don't change the data points, change where we're able to financially place the organization with regards to the percentile of the market. So that's the flexibility that we're giving you is the various percentiles of how you can place yourself. A way that Rick, yeah, I'm going to say Rick's going to chime in here. Yeah.
Hand raised.
There he is. So we brought this to the Ways and Means Committee before, and we had identified some of these organizations at that time that were out of alignment or that were substantially different. And then there were several of them that you recommended as part of the process that we included. St. Charles City, for example, was one of them. Also the county, and that's good and fine. But to answer your question in particular, you can look at like a Ladue that's far wealthier, or a Town and Country that is far wealthier. But you can also look at, on the list of potential comparators, that perhaps Maplewood is a little bit lower on the scheme of things. So by looking at percentiles, you'll have those two organizations, the Town and Countries will be higher, and then, Maplewood maybe lower. Since it's a counting number, not an average, that's okay. So if you had two that were less and two that were more, the 50th percentile still makes you in the middle. Doesn't matter if the O'Fallon's is pays twice as much. It does not skew the statistics. They're just higher. And that's all it'll do. Now, when you use the different percentiles, like the 95th percentile, as we were asked to look at, that kind of narrows it down to who's at that higher end. So it may only be one of those organizations. So one of the things that we recommend at the kind of the end of the day, where to position yourselves strategically, is look at that list of respondents that was on the 7th slide and say, okay, where do you want to be relative to that list of respondents? And then make decisions based on that. That's step one. But one thing that, employees in particular, and also taxpayers, have to bear in mind is that, based on the previous discussion, there's finite dollars, and capital improvement projects and the like that has to be part of the total, budget picture. So there's the strategic decision on where you want to be at, but there's also the financial, what is, possible. And throughout this process, it's the, best faith effort of everyone to come up with, all right, these are the facts, and collectively, essentially make intelligent decisions based on those facts. And hopefully that answers your question.
It does, thank you.
Yeah, I would say just feel free to ask questions freely. I mean, if I have to counsel you on something, I reserve that right, but keep asking your questions.
Well, I have, as usual, I have a lot of questions. So one of the questions I had was reading the benefits report. And I was really surprised that our benefits expressed as a percentage of salary was so much lower than our comparators. And I noticed one extra personal day, and we pay 100% for the employee, but not for the family health care, 50% for family. Are those the things that make up that vast percentage difference? Because it seemed like we were really, really low.
So just as a kind of benchmark to understand our expectation, nationally, the expectation is for a non-union organization for the cost to be between 30 and 35% of total payroll. So the way that you calculate that is you look at wages and salaries plus benefits, and then take the benefit number divided by that total, and that's where you come up with that percentage. The national average for non-union is about 30 to 35%. So the market came in at about 26%. Brentwood's at 16%. It does kind of pique our interest as well as to why that information is so low. But then looking even at a union environment, you would expect not the 30 to the 35th, but more like the 35% to the 45% cost of benefits as a percentage of total comp. So 16% is extremely low. We are still determining as to why that could possibly be. It could be that wages were really high, but what we've come to find is you're 5.2% below the 50th percentile of market. Okay, so that's probably not it. It could be that Social Security was not included in the data. That would be 7.65%. But we're still trying to clarify as to why. It could be that you guys manage your health insurance fabulously, and yeah.
Do.
Okay. And your premiums are much lower than other organizations, or that you self-fund and your stop loss number is controlled well, and you have wellness benefits and those kinds of things. So to the best of our ability, based on the external market, we did look at benefits and got asked questions to items that we wanted answers to, and gave an analysis. But in speaking with Bola and Tangela, they have additional questions that they want to address, and they'd like to see the format of the benefit question a little bit more itemized. So we're working on developing that as well, so that's going to be forthcoming.
Great.
But it is a head scratcher as to why you are at that 16% as far as benefits being low. Now, looking at total mix of pay, it might just be your strategy. You might say, in the market, what we're finding is that employees value the dollar more than the benefits. But our recommendation there would probably say survey your employees and find out what benefits are important to them, and look at exit interviews and those kinds of topics.
Right. So can I just ask a question about like what you put in that? Is it common that in this percentage things that like we have to pay, like workers' comp, unemployment, FICA, that's part of it? Like, it seems baffling to me that is actually, like, that's not really a benefit for the employees. Like, this, we have to pay that as an employer.
So the information, like, for example, on pension, loggers, actuarials give you a number each year that you are responsible for based on Brentwood's own history. So you're underwritten kind of separately from all of the other municipalities that participate in loggers, and you have your own number. So we're looking at narrowing that down a little bit more and identifying what that percentage really is, and maybe even look at it like over a 3-year historical perspective on it. But it is certainly something that raises a question for us as well. And we would like to drill down on that. Certainly, the employer contribution is 100% paid by Brentwood, but what that percentage is and whether or not it's included in that 16%, I'm still not necessarily comfortable in knowing that that's the case.
Okay, so then you transitioned to pension, so I'll go there
Okay,
too.
I'm sorry.
So one of my questions about the retirement plans is, like, it was good to see that a certain percentage of other municipalities, like for the non-uniform, have loggers, but where is our logger, like what level of loggers do we have? And is the level of loggers that we have for our non-uniform employees competitive or comparable to what other municipalities have? I don't know if that would catch up in the 16% number, if like other municipalities are paying more for like a higher level of loggers so that there's more payout at the end. But but basically I want to understand what our employees are going to get when they retire, because that's really important, and we want to make sure that we're competitive there. And then with the uniform, I sort of thought everyone had a defined benefit plan, and I was surprised to see only 17% did. So are we competitive there, and do we match up well with the comparators here?
I think that additional research needs to be done with regards to that. Some respondents, I believe, gave us information as to what level of loggers they were participating in. And we can dig into the loggers database most likely to determine, even if they didn't respond in the survey, to which levels they are participating in, based on basically information out of the website, on loggers website.
And then my other question was, which I think Bola sent late this afternoon, I haven't looked at it, but maybe just something that we need to think about is an evaluation of why staff leave. Is it salary? Is it retirement? You know, what is it that keeps staff, and why do staff leave?
Right. So,
You know, does that vary by department, and
so there's tools and you know, your HR director is fairly new, but maybe there's some historical data from exit interviews, and then surveying employees as well.
no other questions for you? I have other questions,
Okay.
but not
Thanks.
others. Well, I mean, I have a question about the money, but are we going to talk, like, is that like part, is that the next part of the is there a subsequent part of the presentation?
We're not prepared to address that
Okay,
tonight.
Yeah.
okay.
One thing to just keep in mind is that the information in this presentation tonight addresses the compensation. So the benefits, you know, for every $100 that you pay towards compensation, you'll want to know that percentage to estimate and be able to budget as to total dollars impact.
As far as drilling into the benefits question, is that something that you think either that you might have prepared or more clarification by our July 9th?
We certainly
meeting?
should be able to.
Is that, I mean, even, you know, if you appeared by Zoom, obviously, but that's something that we could further address then, and I think.
That's our intent, to help guide you with additional information with regards to that.
And then as far as, you know, recommendations and how we go forward, our plan is to discuss that at the July 9th meeting. We'll have more information from the city in terms of feasibility, you know, what do we do now that we have this information? How do we go forward?
Correct. One of the items that Karen brought up was, how do we maintain this new pay plan going forward? Can you elaborate a little bit more on what you recommend? And you know, we were discussing this afternoon, you know, you referenced the CPI, and we now know that that figure comes out monthly. When is a good time to capture, you know, that data, to use it in developing an update to the new pay plan?
And can you just clarify what CPI is? You know, I of course know what you're talking about, but others.
I guess that was my question. So the Federal Bureau of Labor Statistics, the BLS, publishes for different areas across the country what the consumer price index is. And that's a fancy way of saying inflation, for lack of better words. And for certain areas, they do it monthly. Our typical recommendation is to use, you know, either a 3 or a 5 year kind of average, for the simple reason, there's going to be some years, and we're all old enough to probably remember this, where inflation is, you know, very high, and the CPI number is going to be very high, and the recommendation would be, right, wages need to go up considerably to keep pace. But then there's other cases where the CPI actually does go down, and you're not going to, in those occasions, to say, let's reduce wages by that amount. So by averaging it out over a reasonable period of time, you smooth things out so that you can keep up with the market and eliminating the peaks higher or lower. Very easy, you know, website that, you know, that, again, the St. Louis Federal Reserve in particular publishes, and we get happy, you know, to go through that with you, you know, and share how we would normally calculate it. But right now, for the area, it's running around 3%.
And Rick, how often should they look at making that CPI adjustment?
It's a normal budgetary thing to keep pace with the market. So as you're making budgetary changes relative to salaries, it'd be moving the scale yearly, when budget, permits.
I mean, I think that's what's apparent to me is this is a very different process than what we've looked at in years past when we've done these. You're going to be equipping staff with the ability to maybe predict on a little bit more responsive way so that it's not waiting 2 years to do another study and then find out, well, where are we? I mean, can you speak a little bit to, seems like your market of 50th percentile is kind of what you based a lot of your data on. Can you speak to the differences of the percentiles, maybe a philosophy of with this totally different data analytics that you have? Why would we say we had 95th percentile past year? You know, why are we considering 50th percentile? Is it doesn't even, it's not even apples to apples
Right.
anymore?
So it's really not apples to apples, and I know Rick's gonna want.
Yeah. So it's an apples and oranges comparison. I can't speak to what was done in the past. I don't have a copy of their report. I can make, educated guesses. I mean, a couple possibilities. Who they went out for comparators. You may be at the 95th percentile if you have 20 organizations and 19 of them pay far less than you. You would be at the very top then. That's the one way of getting to 95. Oftentimes, other studies that I have seen, and again, I don't know relative to previous studies that you used, they take an average value and they multiply it by 95% and say, here's the value. And it's not really based on a whole lot. It's just a convenient math, if you will. What we're recommending, and we didn't focus exclusively on the 50th, we calculated from 20 to 80 and everywhere in between. So it's the whole gamut. For the very simple reason, this allows you more freedom to choose on where you want to be at, strategically as a city. Whatever makes sense. Many of our clients start the process off of wanting to be in the middle. That's just the most politically feasible thing to do. But when the numbers are crunched, based on the budget, sometimes the cities that we work with choose to be at a higher level and, want to be, based on the respondents, they believe they should be higher than the middle. Other cases where the finances are not there, they have to be at a lower percentage. Okay, that is really a question that, the Ways and Means Committee, the Board of Aldermen, the city administrator, that's your kind of decision. But all the data is there. The 50th was presented initially and to see, what was, might be possible. But the very last slide, there's 4 on that page and the financial implications for any of them. And we're happy to calculate, any other number that would make sense to you. The methodology, the reason why we choose to or present data the way we are is so that it's hopefully more understandable. The 50th percentile, and I'm trying to eliminate that term, but it really means half places pay more and half pay less. That's all it's saying. The half could pay twice as much, and the other half could pay, half as much. You're still in the middle. And that's what it's intending to mean. The reason why that's valuable is, looking at the list, and employees are smart. They know, my friend works over this place and this is how much they get paid. And you could do the, comparisons. And then so that you can know, all right, this is where we want Brentwood to be and what's financially possible. So it's a little bit, yes, different in methodology, and our intention is so that it is as more transparent and as simple as it can be, so that everybody can understand it. That's our goal. we also, one thing to mention relative to previous questions is, as part of the way Karen and I work, is that we're not a churn and burn kind of company. We work with our clients, years down the road, whenever they have questions, even if, we're not needed. So if I take off my businessman's hat, I mean, our goal is to give you kind of all the tools that you need in order to keep the plan going for years down the line without having to, knock on our door and say, can you look at it again? That's the goal. That just makes sense to us because, we are taxpayers as well. Now, normally, a comp plan, in our estimation, if you're able to keep up with it relative to making adjustments with CPI or whatever on a yearly basis, they should last you 5 years. That's our expectation. Now, if we have extraordinary financial circumstances, whether it's COVID or or something other, nationwide economically, well then, obviously things change, high inflation again. Then you may need to revisit things because things will move faster than, what you would like. But otherwise, our intention is to provide you a product that you can use going forward, not only on the compensation side of things, but also on the classification side of things, as Karen mentioned in the presentation, so that when job titles, or individuals take on additional responsibilities, wearing more and more hats, right? How do you pay them? Well, that's one of the tools that we give you to figure out, right, does this warrant, a grade change? And to do so, to maintain kind of the internal equity and everything that's been built as part of this study, with the employees' assistance, going forward.
Thank you.
Are there other questions? I will not name them by name, but if there are any aldermen in the audience that have questions for our presenters, I would happily recognize you. I'm not seeing any takers on that one. All right, well, so when we come back on the 9th, you'll have more information about benefits, and then we'll have sort of a feasibility discussion about how to proceed with this information. And so with that, I guess we'll just move on to the next agenda item. Thank you very much. Item number 7A on the agenda is, well, item 7 is new business, and 7A is the City Hall roof replacement. Who's got that?
As part of the FEMA capital projects, we got quotes to do the roof on City Hall. And we actually looked at it as doing the entire roof. So when we originally plugged it in, it was roughly $260,000 that was approved. We went through Sourcewell. Sourcewell is the cooperative that can give us competitive bids. And we did that in years past whenever we did the roof overhang and the steps on the north side here. So they came back, they gave us their actual proposal. They partner with Frederick Roofing, which is a local roofing company here in Brentwood. They're the same ones that did the overhang, and the total that they came up with was around $384,000. So knowing that that was all in, that's like gutters, downspouts, things that we didn't consider when we originally put together the quote. So I broke it down into a spreadsheet just to kind of show you the line items. So FEMA capital, we can do the flat roof, which if you look at your little drawing, it's the gray areas that are the flat. And we can do all the flat roof of City Hall for roughly $232,778. The shingled roof that we can do for around $27,000 is right above like the library, so that's the yellow and green area, and that puts you right at $259,777. So you're right at $260,000. If we wanted to go a step further and do the rest of the roof, just to do the entire shingled roofs, which would be the purple areas and a little bit of orange, so that would be over this council chamber area out front, the sloped roofs. and then the sloped roof over by the library as well as the library entrance. So if you were to do those sloped roof areas, you're looking at another $56,000. What you could do is either just do the FEMA, reimburse yourself the 260, but know that you're looking at roughly $57,000 to do the rest of the roof, and it would inflate, of course, you know, cost of goods goes up. Not really sure how old those roof sections are. I know you can usually get 20, 25 years out of most normal roofs that are shingles. The guarantee for this was 30 years, so you're getting, you know, architectural shingles that should last you roughly 30 years. Flat roof guarantees about 20 years against leakage, and, you know, that's a pretty good deal for flat roof. Along with the flat roof, when we do the flat roof, we do have to dismantle that gazebo. So if you go upstairs, there's what used to be a gazebo. I included a photo of it. That has to be removed no matter what. So I have to pay for that out of my line. It won't be covered under FEMA, but that has to be removed just to get to the flat roof. And we won't put it back either. It's not necessary. So what we're looking for is direction from the committee. Do we want to do just the FEMA? Do we want to do the FEMA? I know we have to do the gazebo. So the real question is, do you want to do the gutters and downspouts, which is $53,903, plus the shingled roofs, which would be another $56,000. You're looking at roughly $124,616, and then the $260,000, which is the FEMA capital. And then it is in the 2024 capital budget, another $260,000. So that 260, I did the math, so your budget limit's 260 minus the 124, you'd still have roughly 135, but we have to wait for the FEMA money to catch up. So you're gonna spend all this money in theory, but then hopefully get your 260 back in a year or so. I don't know how quickly it is. And then once we have direction, then we can notify NOVEC.
How would we pay for the shortfall? I mean, is this,
The shortfall's in the
Or is that
budget
all
for
budgeted?
Brentwood's capital. Like, it's in the budget book right now under 6530 is the subcategory. The 384 would be the total, and then you're getting 260 back from FEMA, so.
the
We do have the FEMA money. This
Right.
just allows us to do the complete project.
Right.
So the FEMA money allows us to do the complete project.
Eventually, you're gonna have to do it, it's just a matter of when. You know, things, it's kind of like the parking lot, if you recall, we did just an addition that we could afford, but the library side, we didn't do that parking lot, so it'll fail sooner than the rest of this. If we do the flat roof, that's the part that usually leaks, and it's got less warranty on it, it's older, it's been patched numerous times, so for sure, we have to do the flat roof, which is already in that FEMA number.
And also, importantly, is the gutter, so
Right.
that when we have heavy rains and we're leaving the building,
It spills over.
we're drenched.
It also erodes some of the new
Pavement.
the new pavement that we put in,
Right.
Right.
which is, sorry, I think you had your hand.
Yeah, and I wasn't looking at it initially because we thought, well, if this building's gone, you know, police and administration rebuilds this area, that's not going to happen. And then the library's moving out. So in essence, I feel that the building's more valuable because you've got this extra space. You know, do you want to put more into the mechanical bones of this thing? You know, the roof, HVAC we're doing, we did get, it's within budget. Carrier's going to do that. It's below the 30,000.
I guess the question that I had is for the FEMA, this is part of the alternate projects FEMA grants?
Yes.
Correct? Are there, I know we can't move things around and replace a project with a totally different project that wasn't on the list, but if this project is more and we're not going to be able to get another project, can some more FEMA money go towards this project? No. Is that what the budget limit of 260 is what they capped this project for. Finance director shaking her head yes, so, and
Yeah.
Eric, the FEMA master.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, because we were under on the sweeper, but you can't use the savings from the sweeper to apply towards this. It's capped.
Alderwoman Tice.
So I'm hearing that the gutters are, even though the gutters weren't in the bid, the gutters are an issue.
Correct. It's just a matter of time. It's like, do you want to do them as part of this project because you've already got a contractor mobilized that can do all this roofing? Or do you want to wait and then, this 54,000, it's like, it's probably going to creep up.
And you don't know how old the roof is, the other shingle roofs?
Right.
Small.
And parts of them have been spot repaired too. I know I've walked it before and I know that there's like, your bridge vents are starting to deteriorate. They're getting brittle, which, typically that's towards the end of its useful life. The sun and weathering process has kind of made that asphaltic material brittle.
I don't know when it was put up, but funded a roof replacement.
Well, we shouldn't have.
The
'cause
entirety.
It needs to be long. It needs, if it lasts 30 years.
Yeah.
I'm going to insert myself because I worked here.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And we had a month without air conditioning in the fire department in July, and it was in the summer of 2000. They did the complete roof of this complex.
Great.
Yep.
There we go. Nice to have the
It's
history.
near the end.
well, I mean, I think, anytime you do a project as extensive as this, if you say, well, we'll do phase 2 on the gutters down the road, it's always gonna cost more. And then you're gonna have, again, this situation of parts gonna be at different life cycles, and I guess I'll.
So there's an efficiency.
There is, and to Alderman Gould's point, they would age at the same rate. So if you put it in, well, the flat roof would age differently than the shingled roof, but the shingled roof would all be done, in essence, at one period of time. So if it lasts 25 to 30 years or so, that's 25, 30 years, you could budget that in those capital years. Hopefully I'm long retired.
Me too.
Well, I guess I'll make a motion to recommend the completion of all roof replacement bid items for a total cost of $384, $393.72 with J.E. Novak.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion by Alderman Gould and a second by Alderwoman Tice. Is there further discussion on that matter?
Did that number include the gutters and downspouts, or do I need to?
It does, yeah.
Okay, I
and
just
the
wanted to make sure.
demolition of the
Yep,
gazebo.
okay.
Yes, yes.
Discussion, roll call, please.
Chairwoman Sims,
Yes.
Alderman Gould,
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice.
Yes.
Alderman Erger.
Yes.
Carries by a vote of 4-0.
Okay, thank you, Dan. The next item on the agenda is citizen comments. If there's anyone online or in the gallery that would care to make a comment, please come forward, state your name and address, and you'll be afforded 3 minutes.
No one online with their hand raised.
Not seeing anyone getting up from their chair. Okay, so we will move on from that agenda item, and seeing no further business, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.